Okay, I'm still waiting for it to show on the other screen. So just a moment as we get this going, and it looks like it's up and blocked. Okay, looks like we're good here. What a few days, and we're now on Thursday. Each day comes with more and more surprises. I just wanted to give a huge shout out, and this show is dedicated to Coach Collins. Good for you on going live. And hey, I think he overextended his welcome. Not really. He did a phenomenal job. Still going over 2 hours and almost 7,000 live views. That is absolutely phenomenal. I wanted to talk today and go a little bit deeper because I believe more of us need to pick up the slack here as the news titans, per se. Maybe that wasn't the right word, but this is the direction we're going here. And I say this because yesterday I saw a series of videos that we saw many times before, and it was some sort of police knocking on doors in Australia and the UK because somebody didn't like a post on X or Twitter or Instagram, and they were quote unquote investigating by threatening them. And now we're seeing that nationwide in the United States, individuals that are posting are now openly reviewing this, not to say this is new, but they're videoing it and posting it for everybody to see that, hey, this is happening. You will get a knock on your door. And so I wanted to take a step back and start spreading the love here and get the news out there on what is actually going on. So today, from a technical perspective, we are going to look at what it means to be a targeted person, how geofencing wraps around and makes that possible, and also how this is playing into society, specifically through the Christian society right now. So let's go ahead and read into this. So this is Tech Reality with Barbara. I'm based in Silicon Valley. During COVID, I did a string of videos showing that all the different tech centers were pretty much shut down, lights off, no cars in the parking lot. And by that, I mean not just for the few months, but for several years, while the puppet strings were being manipulated in the background to make sure that you got fed what they wanted to give you. Let me check this one more time here to make sure. Yeah, looks like it's on. I hope so. Okay, so today's episode is called Follow the Fence, Find the Lie. I'm going to try to do a little bit of an opening statement, giving a wink to Baron. Yes, it does take a long time to weave these through, but let's see how this flows. So for most of human history, mysteries stayed mysteries. People disappeared. Crimes were unsolved. Government said, we don't know. And institutions said, hey, trust us. Remember, the worst words you want to hear are, we're from the government and we're here to help you. And sometimes entire populations were punished, silenced, or erased. Not because they were guilty, but because they didn't comply. Yet there was no recording, no way to document. People were just silenced and erased. Today, those mysteries don't stay mysteries. Not because people get more honest, that certainly is not the case, but because technology remembers everything. What used to require informants and surveillance vans and secret police now happens silently through the phone you carry in your pocket, your car, your location data, your purchases, your church attendance, and your political speech. We didn't end surveillance. We automated it. We monetized it. And then we called it marketing, safety, public health. Hey, it's good for you. We're helping you out. Today, we're going to look at this from a lot of different angles. And yes, to get to the root of this, you are a targeted person. What we're talking about is geofencing, what it really is, what a lie looks like in the age of data, and why manipulative marketing works, and why you are the target. Follow the feed, follow the fence. Let's find the truth. So I've broken this down into segments today as markers. The first segment, I want to look at theater. So before we get technical, let's look at the theater that's going on. Let's start with something maybe a little bit lighter. Because honestly, right now, if you don't laugh, well, you're going to miss the pattern. So Gary, this is what Coach Collins would say, right? Coach Collins would say, oh, don't go live. Look at Gary. He can't handle going live in the streams at the same time. You can't balance it all. Gary, you're not going to get a bonus. Well, guess who went live today? Of course, in the opening, I spilled that, and that's the thumbnail. But Coach Collins stepped out there. Apparently, Barron got him out there on the ledge. And so Coach had his first time out there going live. It is scary. And yet that's the community that I think we need to build. As we've seen Coach getting out there and willing to risk it, all of a sudden people who've been listening to him and following him, and apparently almost 7,000 somebodies were standing there live with him and supporting him. So we hope we get a lot more from Coach as he moves forward, because his insights are funny, but actually there's a lot that comes from that channel. So we appreciate that. So you did it. You did get a great job, and I hope you get a box of mints. So go, Coach, go. So here's where it gets interesting. The man behind the curtain, per Gary, was Andrew. But Andrew couldn't quite puppet Gary. Why? Well, Gary's tools in the shed weren't just sharp enough. And Gary leaked something that he shouldn't have. He revealed that he was being manipulated by Turning Point USA and their PR spokesperson, Andrew Colvette, including being shown a photo that was supposedly from Erica with her finger across the faces of two kids, claiming as an alibi that she was with her kids and then preparing dinner for Charlie. I think that was the overrun. But the metadata didn't match the day that the information was being requested, and the size of the child didn't fit that of a toddler. So what was Gary doing? The photo was allegedly meant to be an alibi. Well, it actually dug a deeper hole, and it showed how TPUSA is actively manipulating the information in the background. So Gary doubled down. The very next day, as we all saw, he platformed Mitch's long-lost son. He dug deep. Mitch came out to tell a story, whether true or not. Do you really go knocking on random doors and throw people under the bus? Well, Gary did. Gary chose to go after a long-lost son after he went after people who were angry at Gary. Let's just string them along here like a parade, dig up all this old dirt and throw them away just so we can get ratings. Well, the thing is, the son claimed that, yes, Mitch was telling the truth about being at Fort Huachuca because the base police had called him. Oh, Gary. So what does TPUSA do next? Of course, they come out with the truth and say, sorry, guys, you found out. You got us. We were trying to play a little game in the background. You know, we're just kind of jokesters here. And you caught us. When people stop believing the lie, when manipulation becomes obvious, when questions don't go away, they threaten, they intimidate, and then they turn to lawsuits, or at least to try. So this brings us to segment 2. Enter Candace Owens. So Coach Collins, who opens by saying he's not a coach, adds rumor and perspective, swiveling his head kind of theatrically to reenact what must have happened behind the scenes, to rationalize why TPUSA's increasingly bizarre behavior makes sense to them. Who would be involved in those conversations? What would they be saying? Why would they think this is a good idea? That level of comedy is really bringing out Coach Collins' depth of knowledge and insight into human behavior. And here's why Candace Owens enters the story. You're told she's horrible. She's just a really bad human being. She has no friends. Nobody likes her. She's always putting people down. Her team won't even work with her. That hasn't been my experience. I first encountered Candace, and I didn't even look up, but it's years ago when she testified before Congress. She was sharp and elegant and factual, very direct. She didn't waste time, and she was direct with her answers. Now, for many of us who watch congressional hearings, okay, honestly, many people don't. You see snippets on the news, but I'll watch for days at a time. And the stonewalling and the lies and the, what's it called? The twist of the truth. It's just disgusting to watch these people just wind the clock down. And yet with Candace, she's a straight shooter. And even more so when she's doing her investigations, what I've noticed is she'll come out and say, I don't know. But if you know, let me know. Or if she find out she went down the wrong alley, she'll back out and say, that was the wrong alley. Let's go another direction. She'll admit fault. She'll admit that she found the wrong information and redirect so that as a group, the crowd could start figuring out the truth again. So you're told she's horrible. That wasn't my experience. Has that actually been your experience? And I think that if you're listening to me today, based on the other people that I've named, it's probably not your experience either. So here she is, no wasted words and no fluff. Now, when she and Charlie were on stage together, you may have noticed she would often grab the mic from him. Now, Charlie was a manly man. He wanted to take charge. He wanted to be the leader. He wanted to make sure the women around him were taken care of. There's a joke going around, but based on facts that Candace had said, Charlie would let her drive. He was the man, he would drive the car. Yet, do you know how many times on stage she would grab the mic from him and he would just take one step aside? She would not correct him or step on him, but she would laser into the facts, the truth, and just silence the room without even having to go into a debate. It was over. Mic drop. She trained him, in fact, to be a better debater. As he grew up and grew into this, noticing that he had to put himself out there more and more. And the best way to do that was say, hey, ask me questions. I'll let you know what I know. She helped shape that. She modeled it. Now, regardless of what Ben Shapiro says, there's a lot more there to Candace. Now, although she'll humbly say she's just a mom in a room in her home with a small podcast, well, it's grown because the more she speaks, the more people want to listen. They want to hear the truth and they want to know what they actually saw as the whole world saw it. She strengthens arguments based on facts and research, and that's not appreciated. Candace doesn't appear to be horrible. She appears intelligent and fearless and willing to ask high-quality questions, Baron, and then do the work to answer them. And now one of her closest friends is no longer here. Not quietly and not privately, but a horrific public execution. Someone wanted the whole world to see this. They didn't have a CIA heart attack. They didn't get slowly dosed with whatever in their blood at night. They didn't die of pneumonia, as we keep hearing as a theme so often right now. They died publicly, where somebody wanted this to be done publicly, and then gaslight the whole world about it. Well, not everybody just takes the story that they gave us as a closed case. We want to learn more. We want this to not happen again, and we want those who did it to pay for this. So as someone wanted the world to see this, they were sending a message that if any of you think that you can step outside the bounds of what we let you do, you break off of your leash. We're going to silence you into oblivion. And if the silence doesn't work, you will be removed. TPUSA, very interestingly, this week allegedly terminated the employment of 30 to 40 employees, individuals who worked for that organization because they loved the pathway it was on, worked for that organization because it stood for something in America, in the American culture, and meant something to the whole world. Individuals who were often brought up in this. Individuals who were not the executives that we see that have padded their pockets allegedly, but individuals who had an alarm, woke up every morning, drove into the office, and thought that they were doing God's work. On one level or another, it was a passion, it was a mission. And yet, in exchange for this, they got to pay for the car they drove in. They got to pay for the food they ate. They had a chance to pay for the place they lived in. That's the exchange of a work agreement. So if somebody suspects somebody of speaking out against them, is it paranoia when they remove everyone from around them? And oops, by the way, as multiple sources have stated, they didn't fire the leak. Let's see how much deeper they go. And blessings to all of you who worked for the company that have found this recent change. It's not a place you want to be as this ship goes down, but that doesn't help in the lack of understanding into a question of why me, or why now, or how am I going to pay my bills. So really wishing all of you a settling as this wildfire burns through. So since the moment of that action in September, TPUSA's behavior, from appearance only, this is opinion, has become, frankly, and this is not an expert opinion, just psychopathic at best. The crazier the responses get, the firmer Candace's questions are actually becoming. So this is segment 3, the cease and desist, a weaponized letter. So before Candace, there was Wolves and Finance. It's a small YouTube channel run by Zach, focused on financial anomalies. He's an expert. He looks into the numbers and says, wait, this may not make sense. So he asks questions. Months ago, Zach noticed something very disturbing. A public execution, a CEO that had just less than a week before that put out a notice to saying that they were going to look for a Doge style, and we're not allowed to use that word, so I'm just going to say assessment. Government filings didn't match based on the experience that he had. And yet the CEO was no longer here to make a statement, and those that were in his place weren't making sense. So he did what accountants do. He pulled public federal filings. This is something that anybody can pull. Just Google on the internet. Of course, you can watch Wolves and Finance, see how he pulls it. And of course, on Didi Got a Podcast, Brian explained how those were pulled. By the way, Brian did a phenomenal job. So they pulled public federal filings. TPUSA is a 501c3 at the core. Now, it's got other companies kind of under that umbrella or circling that umbrella, or however that's properly stated in their mind. But the core is donation, nonprofit. They don't pay taxes on the money, and they get a lot of leeway because of that. A lot of these nonprofits become cesspools for crime and corruption and money laundering. That may be why people were looking under the hood. Not to say that TPUSA has anything to do with any of those negative terms, but it's worth looking at. When somebody says, hey, I don't understand what's going on here. We have a massive amount of money coming in. Where's it coming from? And a massive amount going out. Where's it going? And then that person is removed for whatever reason. People want to ask questions. Why was that person asking those questions, and why is he not here anymore? So some basic questions might be, why does TPUSA as an entity have no employees but a massive budget? So this is not the main holding, and we're not allowed to say the word shell company because apparently that's offensive. But under that umbrella of the coagulation of different companies that are together, there was one in particular that a mass amount of money was being transferred into, but listed 0 employees. Well, apparently, Wolves in Finance is not allowed to ask this question. However, as it turns out, according to the legal document, the legal cease and desist that was sent to Zach, turns out TPUSA merely forgot to put down the 83 or so employees on the federal filing that had already been audited by a third-party expert company and officially signed and submitted to the federal government. So you know what Zach got? He got a thank you letter. They said, thank you so much for letting us know that we made an error, because it could be a federal crime if we made a mistake. So you help us catch that. No. TPUSA at least had an attorney contact him and told him to praise TPUSA publicly and shut up. That's the end. That's it. So what is a cease and desist? It's a legal threat. It's not a ruling. In fact, according to Barron, your neighbor or you could write a cease and desist. Now, there are apparently some guidelines, and you can't say you're going to threaten to sue. You can't out of the court. I guess there's some areas there. But anybody can say, hey, enough is enough. Again, it's a legal threat, and it's not a ruling. It's really intimidated. It's really meant to intimidate or silence somebody, get them to back away, be so fearful of moving forward that they just stop on their own. It's too expensive to fight, especially when you have a behemoth that apparently, allegedly, has brought in over $100 million in a matter of months, and now it's got to be probably double that. You and I can't stand up against that. So that's why we use the word allegedly, and we say, in my opinion. And everything here is my opinion. I do my best to research it and pull facts and pull it together. But that's what it is. We're investigating and sharing. But you know what is also risky about this is the PR move. The PR does not look very good for TPUSA. And sometimes it can be effective. Sometimes this is just absolutely catastrophic. So here's the irony. TPUSA has raised more money in the past 3 months than what it looked like in many prior years together. Now, I'm not giving a number and I'm not exact, but how exactly are they going to prove damages from a small YouTube channel that was simply asking questions about filings that were signed and filed with the federal government? So we'll see how this comes out. The other side is a deposition. If in fact they move forward, they're going to have to prove in court the actual lies or defamation and damages. And TPUSA, that would be very interesting to see. We'd like to see where the lies were, because that gets us closer to where the truth actually is. So moving on to segment 4, NDAs are not gag orders. Now the wave moves through the community. YouTubers are popping up and asking, are they next? Are they going to get notice? We don't know. NDAs. In Hollywood, it's often used to protect privacy. right? A lot of individuals can be on set with somebody, or it could be maybe a butler or a maid or a landscaper living behind the gates of a property that a celebrity lives on. It's very important that they manage their image. They've got the PR and marketing, and everything about them is a persona. However, at home, they may not live that way. They may actually use the bathroom. They may actually walk around in their underwear. There may actually be drugs involved. There may be some things that don't fit the persona that was created by the PR team. So NDAs are very popular to make sure that, hey, if I'm going to give you a job, if you see something that is outside of the normal, you can't talk about this. And that's what it is in that arena. And apparently this is what TPUSA is stating that Candace has. But also in business, we have NDAs for the purpose of protecting trade secrets, protecting intellectual property. That could have been part of this as well. I don't think so, and that's not the indication I got. But from a technology perspective, I wanted to just put that out there. But what they are not meant to override the First Amendment. Candace received a different kind of invitation to shut up. TPUSA claims a non-defamation clause tied to an NDA from her speaking agreements, which she ended up terminating 2 years early, and she terminated it just last month. I think she said on December 5th of 2025. So she was done. There's going to be no more of her working with TPUSA. I'm sure that was mutually agreeable. I wasn't in the room. But this was an agreement that she signed when her friend was heading up the company, the friend that she helped start the company with. And it made sense. But apparently it's been adapted and grown, and it's quite overreaching now. But it's not meant to cover up crimes. So Candace claims extenuating circumstances. Her close friend was publicly murdered. Everybody knows that. Everybody saw that. And she wants to know why. And yet she's being told to shut up. Now, what's interesting this week, which Robert put out there, and in the moment, I'm just blanking on his website, and I apologize to you. His last name starts with a G. And he was covering some of the court documents where, on behalf of Mrs. Erica Kirk, there was a filing in the Tyler Robinson case where her attorneys are stating that they want, under victims' rights, they want a speedy trial to wrap this up. Get it over with. Come on, put a bow on it. Move it on. And they don't want any cameras in there, so nobody can see or hear. But the biggest thing is they want it wrapped up so that TPUSA can say, see, all of you are liars. All of you have pointed fingers at us, and it's false. Per a court of peers, they have decided that this person did it. Case is over. Say one more word, and we're going after you legally. So she's got a lot of attorneys right now. Rather than understanding that she's now head of a company that was meant to be part of a community, to help educate individuals, to prove me wrong. Based on your own education, listen to what I have to say in the case of Charlie, and then come up with your own decision in that free space of where we are in the world, in the United States. Instead, she's standing there with the appearance of an alleged dictator, in my opinion only, pointing her finger at the whole world, while we know that she's not being honest. She hasn't been honest about her past. She's not being honest with the questions that Candace is asking. And she has a whole team of attorneys and henchmen working with her in order to perpetuate this. But you know what I don't see? If I had just lost my husband, putting on sparkly outfits and pyrotechnics and smiling and hugging people that I don't even know, you know what I would do? I would take a breath. I would spend this time with my loving children. So it's even more difficult for me to understand this pathway, on top of why we're being shoveled stuff that's not even true. So as Candace claims extenuating circumstances, she just wants to know why. And I believe that we have a right to know why. So she made an offer, as you heard. She says, how much do you want? TPUSA seems to be all about the money right now. That's the bottom line. So she says, tell me how much, and she will do a GoFundMe and have it paid off. But she's not going silent. She says, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for the right to keep asking questions. So she's looking for a form of a buyout. According to Lionel Nation, this PR nightmare leads to a death spiral for Erica Kirk and TPUSA. It may not be today, it may not be this year, but we're just waiting on timing. The head of that company is going to need to be replaced with somebody who can handle that size of an organization and not make a mockery of it. And it probably should not be somebody who has not been forthcoming for a nonprofit. But hey, in politics, how do you know a politician is lying? Allegedly, their lips are moving. Okay, segment 5. I want to now dig into a little bit on geofencing. And then I've got some articles I want to reference as well. But geofencing didn't start as oppression. It actually started as efficiency, a form of a digital perimeter, kind of like an algorithm in a computer. So it was rule-based. Somebody sets up a series of rules that sets up boundaries. You can't go past this. And it might be, on a, just to kind of grasp this, remember the old Sim Cities? You would be in Sim City, but if you turned around, there was nothing there until you turned around and saw it created. So there's rules on what the vantage point is and what can be done within that scenario. In Silicon Valley, autonomous vehicles, where my experience was at Waymo, they have specific PUDOs, pickup and drop-off zones. They have delivery zones, safety constraints, areas where the Waymo could go where the road was already mapped, which again is distinct from Tesla, which maps the roads as it goes, and places where Waymo couldn't go because maybe they were redoing the asphalt that day and the depth of the road was higher in a geospatial manner, a calculation, and so it knew it couldn't roll forward. A geofenced car cannot leave its approved operational area. There's nothing there for it. It doesn't exist. It only exists within the area that it's been allowed to vision or be a part of. The brains on the car are limited. So when I saw 3 Waymos burn during the peaceful conversations, we can call them, in LA this last summer, I asked, was this spontaneous or was this just a massive PR stunt? Who allowed those cars to be called to that area? Who allowed them to be burnt to the ground? Again, that was a major PR stunt in a world where autonomous vehicle market share is at an all-time, this is the moment. And that was news coverage that they would not have been able to pay for. So why was it geofencing not restricted in that scenario? Millions in technology were destroyed. But now expand that logic to people. Maybe COVID. So Santa Clara County paid a Stanford professor to geofence church parishioners during COVID. Court documents confirm this. Let me pull this up and see if I can look at this. There's some articles here that I pulled in reference to this because this is really important to understand what's happening with the Christian community. So this was an article dated March 9th of 2023, written by Gabriel Greschler, Bay Area News Group. And so this is that, I think that's part of Mercury News. Is that what Bay Area News Group is now? I'm not seeing right here, but as we go through, the article, which I posted below, has a picture of a pastor in front of City Hall and his attorney standing around him. That happens to be my pastor. I was at a different church prior to COVID. They were forced to sell their property. I looked for one that was open, and that's where my son and I ended up attending, and we stay there till today. This is posted under govtech.com, Health and Human Services. Cell data, surveillance used to enforce county pandemic rules. Court documents are revealing the extent to which Santa Clara County, California, officials went to crack down on restricted religious gatherings at the Calvary Chapel megachurch. Megachurch, I don't know that we call it that, during the height of the pandemic. Newly unearthed court documents reveal a bevy of extraordinary surveillance measures Santa Clara County used in trying to prove a San Jose church and its congregants were violating COVID rules at the height of the pandemic. In its ongoing legal battle with Calvary Chapel, Santa Clara County used mobile phone data to map concentrations of congregants gathering on the church's Hillsdale Avenue grounds and conducted multiple stealthy inspections in late 2020 and early 2021 that experts say raised major civil liberties questions. Now, I can tell you during that period of time, they would have people yelling from helicopters. They had them spying us with long lenses from the neighboring bridge. They would go through the parking lot and threaten us. You know what? Come to think, it's not all that different than what we just saw in Minneapolis this week. It'll be interesting what moves on with Don Lemon and his crew. But this is what we faced. Our windows were posted with all kinds of legal orders, and people were threatened not to go. The use of I'm going to continue on the article here. The use of third-party phone data, a technique known as geofencing, and the numerous visits by enforcement officers reveal the lengths to which a county known for its strict COVID response was willing to go in order to prove that the church was breaking the rules. We're going to prove it. The county is currently seeking nearly $3 million in public health fines from Calvary, a non-denominational Christian church with 3,000 congregants. Now, it's interesting to note, it had about 300 before COVID, and yet people didn't want to be alone. They not only wanted to learn more about God and be in God's house, but they didn't want to sit in their own home alone. We are groups of humans that need each other. I'm continuing here. Whether or not the church will fork over the money depends on outcomes of state and federal cases that have been winding their way through the courts for nearly 3 years. A lot of updates on that. I'm not going to go through that here, though. A quote, "It is unconscionable how much time and money this county has spent surveilling and targeting this church. This is taxpayer money when they should be focused on rebuilding the community," said Mariah, an attorney for Calvary Chapel. In one striking example of the surveillance efforts, inspection officers with the county's COVID-19 business compliance unit parked a car at a neighboring church's lot to observe the Calvary Chapel worshipers' behavior on 4 separate occasions in August and September of 2020. The article goes down and it's linked below. I did want to read this too. The county's inspectors made 44 visits. You had to pay for this. 44 visits to Calvary Chapel between August of 2020 and January of 2021. to spy on people that were taking their family into God's house. They paid $219 an hour. How much do you get paid an hour? How much are you taxed on what you're paid an hour? That tax money went to pay $219 an hour, repeatedly observing congregants gathering maskless and in large crowds. But remember, Walmart and Home Depot were open as COVID numbers peaked and before a vaccine was widely available. So again, that article is linked below. There's another article I want to look at here. This was NBC Bay Area. This one is dated August 22nd of 2023, titled San Jose's Calvary Chapel Sues Santa Clara County and Claims Unconstitutional Surveillance. The church was ordered to pay a fine for organizing gatherings, that's called church, with congregants at the height of the pandemic when large gatherings weren't allowed. So that information is here as well with some images if you want to see that. This church also has a church school, and these government officials were antagonizing the parents and the children. They will stop at nothing. So I want to pause on that right here, but come back to what I was saying, and then we'll zip on to, there's two more articles that I have. So Santa Clara County paid Stanford to geofence church parishioners. And that didn't come up in these articles, but it does outline that it was a professor at Stanford that was paid that money, in addition to county employees that were harassing or helping out the church parishioners. So what did they do with that information? They knew who attended. They knew when, and they knew how often. Now, at some point during this period, while we were trying to just go to church, the church got talked into tracking the children of the parishioners, not of the school. That was a different issue that they were tracking. But they decided to use a third-party software to sign in the children, which the terms of service I printed and brought into the church office to show that this third-party company geofences the cell phones of the individuals that are checking in the children. And it follows them through data points of wherever they go and sends information back to that third party, of which they sell to whoever will pay for it, is the reality. There's no vision or perception of privacy is what the terms of service were saying, and the privacy policy. And yet the church didn't seem to care. Today, they're still using that same system while they were openly being tracked, the adults, and now the children. They didn't seem to get the concept here. And as we move forward through this conversation, you'll see that they're still not getting the concept. I could use one of Gary's mints about now. Okay, so they knew who attended. They knew groups of people who were friends who went to other locations. I mentioned on last week's video that the Silicon Valley garbage trucks all have cameras on them. They watch, they tag license plates and watch the movements of cars through the community. So in this case, they're tracking the individuals, their families. So what was the data used for, was my question. Well, let me give you just one example. I went to pay my property taxes every year for decades. However, I received a message several months later that they hadn't received my property taxes. And it was clarified that, oh, we did receive it, but the check was partially folded in one corner, which according to their photocopy didn't seem to cover any of the numbers of it. And I don't know how it got folded other than them. because it's sent from my bank to them in a sealed envelope. But because of that, they weren't able to cash the check, and therefore they were initiating a foreclosure process. Well, again, I'm geofenced, I'm in the county, and they went ahead and did not accept my property taxes, as with many of us at that location, that church. But you know what it was? They'd already taken the money out of my account months before that when it was actually due. They just quietly pushed it back. So that was the other article that I had pulled up. And let me see why that one, I'm wondering. Let me go back one and see if that will show here. Yeah, here we go. This article is from Fox News, and this one is dated September 23rd of 2025. I think I'm going to get some. It says over 277,000 people attended Charlie Kirk's memorial. Turning a Point USA spokesman says the Charlie Kirk Show executive producer Andrew Colvett, there's that name again, describes the whirlwind leading up to its late founder Charlie Kirk Memorial and reflects on his growing legacy as he spoke with Jesse Waters. I don't have the rest of the article here. It looks like it was a video, and Fox News is moving forward. So let me jump back over here. So that's what they're doing with the initial data. If they don't want you to live in the community, the geofencing allows them to identify you. This ties into social credit score. They have the data. It's not there to make your life easier. So this takes us to segment 6, targeted people, gang stalking, and social credit score. Geofencing doesn't just market. Let me check this before I. Yeah, you know what? Before we move on there, let me read these next two articles just in case I've skipped it as we open up here. So on October 15th of 2025, truthout.org, I don't know anything about this organization. I was searching stories as evidence, put out an article. It says a new campaign aims to flood churches and Christian colleges with pro-Israel ads. Well, Christians are by nature pro-Israel. Why are they feeding more and more and more in that direction? Well, Christians are now questioning the narrative and the manipulation and the propaganda. So new campaign aims to flood churches and Christian colleges with pro-Israel ads. The campaign is part of a larger $3.2 million contract that also includes paying pastors to produce content. This was by Mick Cleveland Stout. It says it's from Responsible Statecraft, October 15th, 2025. A newly created firm called Show Faith by Works is embarking on a geofencing campaign to target Christian churches and colleges across the American Southwest with pro-Israel advertisements. The pastors and congregations themselves are seemingly unaware of this campaign, and some have concerns with Israel's method to specifically target Christians. According to the firm's filing under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, wait a minute, foreign agent? Show Faith by Works will geofence the actual boundaries of every major church in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado, and all Christian colleges during worship times. Then they will track those attendees and continue to target them with ads on behalf of Israel. The geofencing campaign is part of a larger $3.2 million contract that also includes trying to hire celebrity spokespeople and paying pastors to produce approved content. Think about the bounty system we just explored that was trying to take down Candace. An individual content producer could go on a bounty site, say that they wanted to participate, choose the words or the image that was being doled out, post it onto their site for their followers, and then based on the views, they would get a part of the bounty. The manipulation is there. We also saw this a lot during the elections when YouTubers that didn't even deal with politics were being contacted by the FBI to spread information in exchange for $7,000 here and $7,000 there. RS reached out to hundreds of churches in California, Arizona, Nevada, and Colorado that were listed as potential targets of the geofencing campaign. You know, for the exact information, Barron covered this on his podcast last night. None that were responded were aware of the campaign. They weren't aware that they were a targeted location and targeted people. We're not aware of that. No, you are the first to bring that to our attention, said the press office for Bethel Church in Redding, California. Now, Bethel is fairly cutting edge with what they do. So that was an interesting comment. The project manager of the operation explained in an email to RS that the ads may include invitations for Christians to visit one of our upcoming mobile museum exhibits, or to go to our website to learn more about the program, or to even visit Israel with your church. The firm's pitch deck describes the ads as pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian. The mobile museum, I'm reading here further, that is referred to as a mobile trailer coordinated by its firm that will visit Christian colleges and churches, highlighting atrocities from the Hamas attack on October 7th, as well as footage of IDF explaining the difficulty of fighting bad guys in hostile territory with civilians. It's all propaganda. What's interesting is Barron mentioned that this is like a 3D. You put on a 3D VR headset and you relive the experience that are absolutely horrid and horrible. I'm going to continue reading here. Geofencing has long been a way for corporations to capture audiences by using their location services. It allows corporations to market their products using the location of mobile devices, triggering text, in-app notifications, or mobile ads when users enter a certain physical boundary. This isn't free. There's always money behind it. Somebody's paying for it, and somebody's paying this organization to produce it. In an interview, senior counsel at the Electronic Privacy Information Center described geofencing as a privacy nightmare. This counsel explained that data brokers vacuum up data from various applications that use location services, and they will either sell the data to marketing firms or offer marketing tools themselves. Then users with location services enabled might, for instance, see a specific advertisement when they walk within a certain radius of that store. This person explained that media reports covering that geofencing campaign have been sensationalized and pointed out that it's a common marketing tool. It's not sending information back to the foreign entity. Remember the FARA, F-A-R-A. They have to register. It is not sending information back to the foreign country. It's a way to just deliver ads. We're helping you out. We'll find something that you're actually interested in so we can make your life easier. I'm continuing now with the story. This is a one-way ad push, one way, using marketing tools that have been in place for more than a decade. Explained that while it is commonplace, the technique is incredibly invasive. The fact has become so common, and that foreign governments are now using it for targeted, precise influence campaigns. Shows how much we need regulation to stamp down on the practice. Today, It's the Israeli government looking to curry favor in Christians. But tomorrow it could be foreign adversary looking to foment discord in a specific U.S. city. And thus, it has broad national security implications. I'm continuing reading here. Some members of the communities listed as potential targets of Israel's geofencing campaign share these concerns about Israel using this marketing technique. A mechanical engineer in Colorado Springs has been conducting outreach to pastors and local newspapers in order to raise awareness that 7 local churches were listed in the document as targets of the geofencing campaign. Micah circulated a document outlining these concerns, and RS obtained the copy. What jumps out immediately is how the entire document talks about Christians as targets to be manipulated. This is you. This is me. This is your children. This isn't respectful outreach. It's warfare language. I'm continuing here. One of Micah's main concerns is that the firm is paying pastors on behalf of Israel. Now this is my own, but I will tell you, and I've mentioned this previously, that on the week that Candace asked for a truce, and she said just for 1 week, will pastors not use her name? She didn't even really ask for no slander. She said, just can you not speak my name for 1 week? My pastor at the location we already talked about stood at the podium in the middle of the first service and said, Candace is crazy. Where would that come from? And yet it fed into the questions. Why is that being pushed in the middle of a sermon where the Bible is open and we're studying the Word of God? There's nowhere in my Bible that it says Candace is crazy. And this is pretty serious. As pastors often state, they help with loose therapy or psychological help. They're not psychologists, but they certainly don't have the right to diagnose somebody. How did this even fit in? Show Faith by Works pitches deck includes a plan to give stipends for individual guest pastors. So who's visiting your church? They were at Riverside last night. Bilingual pastors or pastors who match target demographics to record messages based on content creation targets. Micah says that this creates financial conflicts of interest where religious leaders become financially dependent on foreign government messaging, compromising their independence and integrity. Asa, Michael's brother, attends a specific church in Arizona, one of the churches listed by Show Faith by Works. This person said that Show Faith by Works campaign is a reaction to Israel losing support of America's youth. This entire project is an attempt to regain the attention of hearts and support of Gen Z through the use of religious manipulation. So the article is listed if you want to read more on that. But as it's been pointed out, there's an individual at TPUSA who decided to move into a consultant role in order to head up this particular organization that is also founded by or partnered by another key name that we know. And apparently this is what was rolled out for all those who went to the memorial in Arizona, thinking that they were going to pay homage to Charlie, and instead got 9 hours of one person after another on the stage self-promoting while their phones were being geofenced and tracked and targeted. One final article here, and then I'll go back to the overview of what I was saying. But this is CAIR, C-A-I-R press release. Again, I'm not familiar with them. I don't have one side or the other, but it did come up in my search, so I wanted to look at it. It was dated December 5th of 2025. And it shows a picture of a geofence on there. So if you want to go to that article, you can see it. It's essentially just a map with a box around it. It could be a box, it can be a circle. I think it's usually a circle. I think this box is odd, but I guess you can do it any way you want. You can do a flower. CAIR condemns Israeli foreign agents' plan to geofence mass message Methodist churchgoers with anti-Palestinian texts. And I'm not going to read this article, but it is posted before for more information in case you want to help with that. And so if your church is on the list, definitely not only let the pastor know, but be vigilant on who's coming to talk and let the parishioners know, because those in the office may not be sharing that they're taking on money from a foreign government in order to feed you propaganda. They may not be aware of what is actually being done, but they will be aware when they take on extra money. So back to segment 6 here. Targeted people, gang stalking, and social credit score. Geofencing doesn't just market, it categorizes. Targeted person, someone flagged by data systems. And as you know, unfortunately, I know a lot about that. They're watched, they're pressured, they're isolated. Technology is manipulated. Now, when we take a targeted person and we put around it a wrapper of gang stalking, which has been documented by decades, as Coach Coleman might say, Mortal Kombat Ultra, it's a style of psychological pressure. The end goal is to make the person believe that they're crazy. So one example is an individual who is part of the psychological operation will go out into community and as maybe find 10 different people, and they slide them each, let's say $100. So now you got 10 people, and they say, all you have to do is take your car and drive it to this house and pull across the street so that your headlights face into this window, and just flicker your lights and maybe tap your horn. And each person will have a different time slot and a different day. And then the individual on the other side of that window that's targeted will realize, what is weird with the flashing of the lights and the honking? They'll start to think that, just put it together and there's something's odd, but there's not enough evidence. There's no crime. There's nothing there that is really bad, but it's odd. And then each one of those individuals that got $100, they're each told a story. Hey, this person's having a birthday party, and it would be fun if you just flickered the lights at that moment and then drove off. Or there's a sensor we need to test. Can you just flicker your lights there and we'll see if it goes on? And that's all we need to do. Then you can drive. They don't know why. They don't know that there's 9 other people around them that are doing the same thing, or 100 people, or 1,000 people. As we talked about the bounty system, that is a form of electronic gang stalking. So this differs from what Baron Coleman describes in his high IQ operation, but it's the same tools. It's just a different intent. And yes, churches are the target. Christians are specifically the target, and Christian children are the end game. And this is globally. This is just what we've realized here in the United States. And once again, as we're not being told the truth, then we're being manipulated and gaslit and disinformation and misinformation, all those terms that I'd never heard about before the last few years. We're being lied to. And TPUSA directly used this service allegedly at Charlie Kirk's memorial. And last night, according to Barron, this same rollout and geofencing and the paying pastors was kicked off in what they called LA, but that's why Barron calls it LA-ish. It's in Riverside. I think it was Harvest Church, which is not LA. but we can call it LA adjacent if we want to go to identity issues. So how do you avoid being geofenced? You don't. You don't have any control of it. You don't disappear, but you can reduce signals. There are things that you can do to mitigate it and to keep your children safe. I'm adamant a child does not need their cell phone anywhere they go. If they need help, there's somebody else who has a phone. That is just a tracking device. Don't use tools that specifically track them, because if you're tracking them, you didn't create the software. Somebody else created that software. They're tracking them. There's a man in the middle that is also following children. There's 3 basic methods, though, that you can do. One is signal disruption, and that might be something like a Faraday bag. I've even seen them on Walmart. Often you still need to wrap it in the proverbial tin foil. Who was it that said tinfoil Speedo? I think that was also Coach Collins. In itself, it's not enough, but in combined with Faraday bags and device discipline, we didn't bring them into church. I didn't know this was happening, but I knew that it could happen. So my family left our phones at home. But that doesn't matter. They still took our images and pictures and tracked us, and still somehow geofenced me and didn't accept my property tax payment. So number 1, again, is signal disruption. Faraday bags and device discipline. There's a lot here. Number 2, location variability. Don't create predictable patterns. If you think you're being followed, take a different route to and from work every day, to and from school every day. Figure out different pathways. This is good for a child too, so that there isn't a specific route they walk every day. So then that suspicious white van doesn't know to expect your child at that corner at that time. Vary your routes. Go wild with it. Digital minimalism. We are used to having our phone in our pocket. We're used to constantly being in front of monitors or smart TV everywhere we go. But truly, this is another reason why we need to just set it down and walk away. Now, some of you might be laughing. My son would ask, what is that? But do you remember? I actually have one in my home. It's a phone that has a wire, right? I'm going to see if I have anything. I don't have anything here, but that plugged into the wall. You could only walk as far as that electrical cable was. You couldn't go any further. That would be the end of it. So what would happen is if you left the house, you didn't hear the phone ring and you missed a phone call. And sometimes that just happened. You missed a phone call. And then they had an invention that was revolutionary, an answering machine. You didn't have to wait by the phone all day. You didn't have to sit there at that metal and odd kind of kitchen table and sit by and staring at the phone. You could walk away. You could go to school. You could go hang out with your friends. And then when you come home, the first thing you would do, nothing else. You put your keys down, go push the button and listen to your messages. This was fun. I actually miss those times of going home into an empty house and then there's no messages for me. I miss that period of my life. All the family would have one machine and everybody would listen to their own messages. Who called me today? It would be exciting. But it also put boundaries on not just carrying a phone in the pocket where people bother you all the time, where people are constantly after you and your attention. Pay attention to me here, buy this, come over here, spend time here, study this, look at this. That didn't happen. You had freedom. You were a human being. You could enjoy life. So again, those 3 are digital disruption, such as Faraday bags. I would post one in the comments or description for you, but quite honestly, I haven't tested any that I love. So if you have a suggestion, please let me know because mine are wrapped in tinfoil. The next one is location variability. Have some fun with life. Take different paths, trails, see the world. And 3, it's also good for your brain too. 3, digital minimalism. Less data is exhausted, right? Don't leak where you're at. Don't put yourself prey to these targets. Push the button and turn it off. So this isn't paranoia and this isn't strategy. This is the real world that we live in here. You are a targeted person. Your child is a targeted person. And as we've seen, Christians and churches are targeted. So I want to kind of close this up a little bit. Turning the lights on. No one can trust Gary, allegedly, in my opinion. And you'll see that it's very rare that I point out somebody, but come on. Gary just, the manipulation he put out, he gets this back. But that's okay. Because Ian Carroll and his team built something far better. TheWebb. WEBB. It's an AI-powered information sorter using large language models to cross-reference articles and databases, congressional records, YouTube files, X feeds. In an instant, you can pull it right up on the screen. In fact, it'll go to the exact part of a YouTube video where the topic was discussed. It's absolutely amazing. This is where we're at today, and this is why AI is so important. Artificial intelligence can be your friend. It's extremely helpful, and it helps us with the truth. This is what turning on the lights looks like. So once again, give the man some mints. Coach Collins, congratulations. 2 hours, nearly 7,000 live viewers. Go, Gary. Everybody, have a great day.